a woman control the relationship by submitting to the battering, and then when he comes around with the flowers and the apologies and begging for forgiveness, she is in control for a period of time until his resentments build up. And it's really some loony stuff. It takes a while observing it to realize what's going on.
So you're saying that sometimes there may be some power in a weird sort of way that the woman may be getting from submitting to.
It's two sick people feeding into each other's sickness, yes.
Okay, so what you see is it takes two to have this situation happen.
Well, not at all times. But when they stay, when they don't want to let it go, it's something you need to look at.
Okay. Thank you. Why do you think people stay in abusive situations?
I think because there's a lot of confusion. I believe because there's a lot of confusion. I was in an abusive relationship, but it was mostly verbal. And I consider it abusive because I wasn't used to being used as a pawn through profanity. And I stayed because I felt that I needed to see if this would work. Instead of knowing deep down inside that it wasn't going to work because this type of person wasn't in my category as a person, because she was abusive, she was loud, she was very verbal, and I didn't really like that. But because I thought I needed to stay like as a challenge because of being in, say, AA, I thought this was the person God had sent me. And I didn't want to leave because I felt like, hey, you know what? Supposedly I needed to stick around just to see when the change would happen, until I got tired of the verbal abuse, and I said, you know what, I've had enough, it's time for you to go. And that took a lot out of me. I had to go to a higher power to seek the power to tell this person to leave my life.
Thank you so much. Welcome back. Ladies, what did you hear? I thought it was interesting that I had a couple of male students volunteer their opinion. Did anything strike you?
Well, go ahead. Well, I think the woman student was right on in terms of some of the things she said about why victims stay. Denial, the fact that you're trying to stay in for one reason or another, the challenge that you can change someone. I have so many victims tell me that I know the minute I marry this man, he's going to change from this frog into a Prince Charming, and it doesn't happen. The second man, I had a little problem with that they're both sick and somehow feeding into the situation. He didn't take into account the real balance of power and control. And in abusive relationships where that woman is being battered, she is without any power. Many men will say, she pushed my buttons. That's their excuse to batter. And I don't accept that. I think what happens is they have no control over themselves, and they, instead of realizing that, they want to put the blame on someone else. And the third student was, I think, very appropriate in that he's staying as a challenge and trying to make this person change and see a change. And you just can't do that. People have to change themselves.
Yeah, it's tiring.
It's like the savior complex. I can save this person if I just stay and help them. I can change their attitude about everything. Okay. I can change their behavior, and it just won't work.
Okay. Now, both of them are, I think there was a mention of the flowers and candy, and I believe that's our third phase. And we were looking at the cycle of violence, which was what's referred to often as the honeymoon phase. And could you share with us a little bit about what that might be?
My feeling is that both the batterer and the battery love the honeymoon phase. They'd like to be there all the time. That's when everything is wonderful and beautiful and like the movies. Okay. And they would like that to stay. They think it will. They think they can do it without help. And each time this cycle grows smaller and smaller, the honeymoon phase gets shorter and shorter, and they don't understand why. It's hard for us to recognize that the batterer really likes the honeymoon phase too.
Okay, so that's the time where I'm sorry, I don't know what got into me, it's going to be different.
I'll never do it again. And unfortunately, for most DAs and law enforcement types, we see these victims in that phase. Because he's in jail, He's now calling from the jail, those pitiful middle of the night collect phone calls that I'll never do it again. The children crying in the background, they need their father. I'm going to treat you wonderfully. And all of a sudden it's the man that she fell in love with. It's the man she wanted to marry. Now if you just go to the DA and tell her that I didn't do this, we can have this all the time. And so then that's what I have to deal with as a DA, and had to come up with a policy that's going to deal with that. And that policy is, let's look at what happened at the time of the battery. If that battery did in fact occur, that's what I want to hear about, and that's what we're going to have to bring him to court on. You cannot now go back and take that away. We don't have a time machine. If we could skip back and it never happened, that would be one thing, but it did happen. We're going to have to deal with it.
Okay, so part of what you're talking about, which is I know part of the treatment of batterers, has to do with accountability.
Right.
Has to do with saying, okay, this is what this is what happened, this is why it happened, you know, this is what I can do differently.
That's right.
I have heard it stated, and I don't know, I'd just like to throw it out for your opinion, in the recovering community, seeing battering as an addiction. What do you think about that? Do you think that there's sort of an addictive quality to violence in relationships?
I think we'll know that in several months, because now we have the 32-week, which will soon be one-year program for batterers, and there will be a study done as soon as this first 1 year is finished, and we will see if that can be broken, if it actually works to go through batterers treatment. Up until this past, what, year and a half, it was 12 weeks.
Okay.
12 weeks is nothing in therapy. So we're hoping, all of us, legal community, those of us who work with batterers and batterees, that it will help.
Okay.
And I certainly don't see it as addicting. I think it is a condition that people buy into and stay in. I think it's built from a lifetime of things. That person may have come from abusive relationships. They may have seen them occur in their families. It may have gone on generation after generation, but it can be stopped. Not every person that's raised in an abusive home grows up to be abusive, so therefore it's not addicting. It can be stopped. It is learned behavior, and because it is learned, it can be unlearned.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. Now, your program next door also offers treatment for batterers.
Yes, we offer treatment for both male batterers and female batterers.
Okay.
Many times the police arrive, and by the time they get there, it's mutual combat. She has finally struck out, and maybe there are scratches on his face. They will both be photographed and both be required to go into batterers treatment. Many women don't like that, but my own personal feeling is, if they are forced to get help, whatever that help is, they're now both getting treatment, and that's good.
Okay. So you, in fact, do see, I know you mentioned the 95% that tends to be female victims, but in fact there are a portion out there of male victims who need to be recognized.
That's correct, and the way I break it down when I talk about it, in that 5% of women who are perpetrators, 2% of those are women who are fighting back. They've been battered, and now he's closed his eyes or turned his head, and she gets the first lick in. The other 2% are usually substance abusing women who have been brought up in these violent relationships, had a prior relationship where violence was happening or grew up in it, and now they know that they've got to fight back first to get into it. But 1% of female batterers are the truly violent woman. She does exist. She's out there. Where she come from? Probably created from these homes, raised up and seeing her mother beaten day in and day out, and probably saying to herself, that's never going to happen to me.
That's right. That for sure isn't. Now, we do have a graphic on why people stay in these relationships, male or female. I think this would be a good time for us to take a look at that. Well, let's see. We have shame, humiliation, security, identity, low self-esteem, survival, learned helplessness, fear of losing custody, fear of court system, and economic dependence. That's quite a list. Which one, do several jump out at you in terms of your experience?
Low self-esteem.
Okay.
Most of these women have very low self-esteem, and I think it goes way back to the learned behavior that Rolanda talked about. When they're little girls, mom says, Dad's coming home and he's going to be angry tonight, so you go upstairs to the bedroom and you lock your door and I'll come and get you. And so she can hear mother screaming for help, mother being called names, mother being told that she's worthless, and so she learns that, and she takes that into the next generation. And the son is sitting in watching TV, and he hears that women are to be beaten and to be abused verbally. And so low self-esteem goes through the whole family.
A lot of what jumps out at me and many of the victims I see is not just the economic dependence, which is a lot of that, but many women feel, I mean, maybe it's the nature of our society, that the true family is the husband, the wife, and the children. And they want this family structure whatever the cost. Yeah. And so they're dependent on this idea of the perfect family, and somehow admitting that they're being battered and having to break this family could be the worst thing that could ever happen, whether or not this woman has financial independence or not. So I see that quite a bit. And then I see the low self-esteem situation, and I see the woman who just thinks that she cannot get out. This man has made himself all-powerful. He has become God. She may have left once or twice before, but she went to an aunt or a relative or someone he knew, and he found her right away. So now she's convinced herself that there is no getting away.
And that actually reminds me of fear of retaliation.
That's right.
I mean, I've had women say to me, look, if I make the decision to leave, he's already said he's going to find me.
That's
and
right.
when he does, he's going to kill me.
That's right.
Safety plan is really important for a woman. The first thing that we try to have her develop is a friendship with someone her batterer does not know. That would be a person, for example, who lived close enough to her home where she could get there for safety if she needed to. We also try to have her develop a verbal that she can do with this woman. For example, things are happening in the home. She thinks something awful is going to happen to her, so she calls her friend and says something like, "Hello, it's a wonderful day today, don't you think?" That's the verbal cue. Call the police, call 911, get me some help. Or I'm coming right away. We also have her take all of her valuable possessions, documents that she might need in an emergency, put them in a box, also pack a suitcase for herself and her children, and take them to this friend's home. So if she needs to get out, she can do it without telling him.
And don't forget to put a little money in there, too.
That's right.
We'll find a lot of victims are kept from the checking account, kept away from any monies because, of course, his determination is that she will stay in this relationship, and if she has money, she can't go. Okay. So when she does that weekly shopping, keep $1, $2 away and tuck that away.
Ladies, I want to thank you both for what you've had to offer today. I appreciate your time. Thank you for joining us tonight on Bay Area Psychology. Join us next week as we take a look at affirmative action and explore the emotions surrounding this issue. I'm Mary Crocker Cook, and this is Bay Area Psychology. Good night.